The Academy's main hall was a place where silence spoke louder than words. Hundreds of alien cadets sat inside, their faces tense, their eyes locked on the massive hologram floating at the center. The image was terrifying. A planet shrouded in storms, oceans smashing against cliffs, skies full of fire and ash. Predators the size of buildings roamed the holographic landscape. Every detail screamed of death. The instructor, a tall alien with silver skin and dark ridges across his head, paced slowly in front of them. His voice was steady but carried a warning that sank deep into every cadet's bones. "These planets," he said, pointing at the hologram, "are what we call Deathworlds. They are places no one should visit. Even our most advanced soldiers avoid them. Entire expeditions have vanished without leaving a trace. To step on such a world is to invite death itself." The hall grew colder. Some cadets shifted nervously, their tails twitching or their wings folding tighter. Whispers ran across the rows, each one soaked with fear. But at the very back of the hall, one cadet was not afraid. The human sat quietly, leaning on the chair like he belonged somewhere else entirely. While the others stared in horror, his lips curved upward in a faint smirk. He looked as if the hologram was a joke, as if the storms and monsters were nothing more than child's play. It didn't take long for others to notice. "Why is he smiling?" one cadet whispered. "Does he not understand?" Another replied, voice sharp with disbelief. The instructor's gaze swept over the class. His eyes froze on the human for a heartbeat. That smirk, it was too calm, too knowing. With a deeper voice, he continued, this time heavier, as if trying to crush that look of quiet confidence. "Listen carefully," the instructor growled. "These worlds are not like your training simulations. Their gravity can break your bones. Their air can burn your lungs. Their plants release toxins strong enough to kill armies. Their predators destroy armored vehicles as if they were toys. That is why cadets are forbidden from visiting. No exceptions. Do you understand?" The chorus of alien voices answered quickly, "Yes, instructor." The human didn't answer. He only folded his arms and looked back at the storm-filled hologram, his smirk still resting on his face like a secret. When the lecture ended, the cadets spilled into the wide corridors. The air was thick with nervous chatter. "Deathworlds are cursed," one cadet muttered. "No one could live there, not even for a day," another added. Yet their eyes kept sliding back to the human, who walked past them without a word. His steps were steady, almost relaxed, as though he had walked out of a simple lesson instead of a warning of nightmares. Finally, one alien cadet couldn't hold it anymore. His voice shook as he called out, "Why were you smiling in there? Did you not hear what the instructor said?" The human stopped. His boots echoed on the floor as he turned his head slightly. His expression didn't change, but his voice was calm, almost casual, when he answered, "You've never seen home." The corridor fell silent. A few cadets blinked in confusion. Some exchanged nervous glances. "Home?" one repeated. "What is he talking about?" another hissed. But the human didn't explain. He just walked away, leaving behind a storm of unanswered questions. That night, whispers filled the dormitories. Alien cadets gathered in small groups, their voices trembling. They replayed his words again and again. What did he mean? Is his planet a death world? No, impossible. If it were, how would humans even exist? One cadet, too curious to sleep, sneaked into the Academy's restricted archives. He searched for records about Deathworlds. Most files were locked with red warnings. Access denied. Lethal data classified. But he managed to catch glimpses, descriptions of planets where everything was a weapon, where even the ground itself seemed alive and hostile. Entire species had tried to colonize them. All had failed. Then he found one reference. Just a single line buried deep in the records. A planet unlisted by name, flagged as a Class 10 Deathworld. Every detail about it was blacked out. Only one word remained visible. Origin. The cadet froze. Origin. Did that mean? Back in his bunk, the human lay with his hands behind his head, staring at the ceiling. He could hear the whispers through the walls. He could feel the fear growing around him. But none of it mattered. He had lived with predators that hunted in the night, with storms that swallowed cities, with diseases that killed millions. To him, it was life. To him, it was home. The others called them Deathworlds. He called it Earth. The smirk returned to his face as he closed his eyes. For the aliens, Earth was a nightmare they could not imagine. For humans, it was simply the beginning. The next morning, the Academy's training yard buzzed with quiet tension. Alien cadets gathered in groups, their voices hushed, eyes darting toward one figure walking calmly across the ground. The human. The rumor of his words, "You've never seen home," had spread through the entire dormitory like wildfire. No one could stop talking about it, though most were too afraid to ask him directly what it meant. For the alien cadets, the mystery was unbearable. Why would a human smile during a lecture about Deathworlds? Why would he call his home in the same breath as those forbidden places? A trio of cadets whispered near the combat rings. One with scaled skin flicked his tail nervously. Maybe humans exaggerate. Maybe he was only trying to scare us. Another, a winged cadet with trembling feathers, shook her head. No, he didn't look like someone telling a joke. He looked sure. Their conversation froze when the human passed by. His posture was casual, but his gaze was sharp, as if he could hear every word they spoke. His calm presence only made their unease grow. Later, during weapons training, the tension finally broke. The instructor had assigned pairs for close combat drills. Alien cadets stumbled and hesitated, their movements careful and defensive. But when the human stepped into the ring, something changed. His body moved with a natural rhythm, fast but controlled, like someone who had grown up fighting not in classrooms but in real life. Every strike he delivered was precise. Every dodge was effortless. He disarmed his opponent in seconds, leaving the onlookers stunned. The cadets around the ring whispered fiercely. He fights like he's used to danger. No one moves like that unless they've lived with predators. Is it true? Is Earth? One cadet, younger and bolder than the rest, couldn't hold back any longer. As the human left the ring, wiping sweat from his brow, the cadet stepped forward and asked the question that weighed on everyone's mind. His voice shook, but the words came out clear. Why did you smile during the Deathworld lecture? The yard fell silent. Even the instructor paused, his eyes narrowing in curiosity. The cadets froze in place, waiting for the human's answer. The human stopped, looking at the brave cadet who had spoken. His expression remained calm, though that faint smirk threatened to return. For a long moment, he said nothing, letting the silence stretch until the cadet's knees nearly buckled under the pressure. Finally, he spoke. Because everything they described. He glanced toward the others, his voice slow and steady. It sounded familiar. Gasps spread through the crowd. The cadets exchanged horrified glances. Familiar? How could storms that ripped apart cities or predators larger than machines be familiar? The cadet who had asked the question stammered. Why, you mean your home? The human cut him off with a small shake of the head. Not today, he said quietly. You're not ready to hear it. He turned to leave, but his words had already shattered the calm. The whispers grew louder, more desperate. What does that mean? Is he admitting Earth is a death world? But how could anyone live there? That night, the academy was restless. Cadets gathered around datapads, scouring the archives again. They searched for the truth, for proof that humans came from a forbidden world. But the files only deepened the mystery. Records of Earth were strangely limited, cut short or blurred by classified seals. Every official note about the planet ended the same way. Access restricted. Further inquiry denied. The more the cadets searched, the more frightened they became. One cadet slammed his fist against the table. If Earth really is a death world, then why are humans alive at all? Why are they here with us? Another whispered, maybe that's why they're stronger. Maybe that's why he fights like that. He grew up where death is normal. The thought sent shivers through them all. Meanwhile, the human sat alone on the academy roof, staring at the night sky. The twin moons cast pale light across the training grounds. He could hear the voices below, the fear and curiosity mixing into a storm of rumors. But he didn't try to stop them. He let them wander. His mind wandered back to Earth. Forests thick with predators that hunted in silence, deserts that swallowed the careless, storms that split the sky in half. He thought of fire, ice, poison, hunger, and how his people had endured all of it. To the aliens, those things were nightmares. To him, they were simply childhood memories. The smirk returned to his face. He whispered to himself, so quietly that no one could hear, "One day, they'll know. One day, they'll understand why Earth makes us who we are." Down below, the cadets kept talking, their imaginations spiraling. They had heard something that day they could never forget. The question had been asked. The answer was only half given, but it was enough to shake the academy. And now, fear and curiosity would not let them rest. The academy was never truly silent after the human spoke those words. His calm tone, his refusal to explain, and the way he walked away left a shadow in the minds of every cadet. They tried to train, they tried to focus, but the question never left them. Was Earth a death world? By the third night, curiosity had grown too heavy to ignore. A small group of cadets gathered in one of the study chambers. The room was dimly lit, the only glow coming from datapads spread across the table. Their voices were hushed, as though even the walls might betray them. "We have to know," whispered the winged cadet, her feathers ruffled with unease. He wasn't lying. You all saw it in his eyes. The scaled cadet hissed back, "If Earth really is a death world, then why does the Academy even allow humans to train here? Why invite danger into the ranks?" A third cadet, with pale skin and glowing eyes, tapped quickly on his datapad. "That's exactly what we're going to find out." The system beeped softly as he hacked deeper into the archives, slipping past basic restrictions. Files appeared on the screen, flashing warnings in red. Access forbidden. Data classified. The cadets leaned closer, their hearts racing. Each record they opened was more terrifying than the last. One file described a planet where storms crushed cities every season. Another spoke of a world where even the soil itself released poison. Each ended the same way: colonization attempt. Failed. Expedition. Lost. But then, buried deeper than the rest, they found a record unlike any other. The page was almost completely blacked out, censored by layers of security. Only fragments of text remained. World designation. Redacted. Classification. Deathworld. Tier 10. Status. Origin species confirmed. The cadets stared at the words, their blood running cold. Origin species. That could only mean one thing: the world was not just dangerous. It was the birthplace of an intelligent race. Origin, that's humans, the winged cadet whispered, her voice trembling. It has to be. The room fell into heavy silence. The possibility was too terrifying to believe, yet too clear to deny. Suddenly, the datapad beeped again. A new file flashed across the screen, restricted visuals from exploration drones. The cadets hesitated, then pressed play. The footage was shaky, filled with static, but what they saw turned their stomachs. Vast jungles where predators leapt from the shadows, striking faster than the eye could follow. Deserts where lightning storms ripped the ground apart. Oceans filled with creatures larger than ships. And in every scene, survival seemed impossible. But the final clip silenced them completely. It showed a village. Humans, ordinary humans, walking in the middle of all that danger. Children laughing near rivers where monstrous shapes moved under the water. Farmers tending crops in soil filled with venomous insects. Families living calmly in the middle of a world that should have killed them all. The winged cadets' feathers trembled violently. How do they live like this?" The scaled cadet whispered. No wonder he smiled. For him, this is normal. Before they could say more, the door to the study chamber creaked open. The cadets froze. In the doorway stood the human. He leaned casually against the frame, his eyes half-shadowed, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, no one dared to move. Then he stepped inside, his boots echoing softly against the floor. "You've been busy," he said quietly. His voice wasn't angry, but it carried weight. The cadets quickly tried to shut down the datapad, but he had already seen enough. The human walked up to the table, glancing at the frozen image of Earth's wild jungles. His smirk returned, faint but sharper now, as if he found their fear amusing. "So," he said, his tone calm, "you found out." The cadets exchanged uneasy glances. None of them wanted to speak, but the silence demanded an answer. Finally, the pale-eyed cadet whispered, "It's true, isn't it? Earth is one of them, a death world." The human didn't reply immediately. He studied their terrified faces, the way their bodies trembled, the way their voices cracked. And then, slowly, he nodded. "Yes," he said, "that's home." The cadets recoiled, as though the word itself carried poison. Their minds raced with images of what they had seen. The storms, the predators, the unending dangers, and the idea that an entire species had not only survived but thrived there. The human tilted his head slightly. "Now you understand why your simulations feel like games to us. Why your danger feels like practice. We are not reckless. We are prepared. Earth prepared us." The scaled cadet stammered. "But how can your kind live on such a planet?" The human's smirk deepened. His eyes gleamed with something between pride and warning. "The same way you breathe air or drink water. It's natural. It's who we are." He turned, walking toward the door again. His words lingered in the air like smoke, heavy and impossible to ignore. "You call them Deathworlds," he said over his shoulder. "We just call it life." The door closed behind him, leaving the cadets in silence. Their datapads still glowed with the haunting images of Earth, but their hands shook too much to turn them off. For the first time, they weren't just curious. They were afraid. The Academy's combat arena was alive with noise. Holographic barriers shimmered as instructors prepared the next simulation. Rows of cadets filled the stands, nervous energy buzzing among them. Today's drill was a survival test. Each group of cadets would face holographic predators based on real Deathworld species. The instructor's voice boomed through the speakers. "Remember, cadets, this test is not about bravery. It is about survival. You are to last as long as possible. Do not try to be heroes." Cadets muttered under their breath. They already knew what was coming. Creatures that even holograms could barely contain. Razor-clawed beasts, venomous reptiles, swarms of insects. Just the idea made some shiver. But all eyes, whether they admitted it or not, kept sliding toward one figure. The human. He sat on the bench, calm as ever, his expression unreadable. That same faint smirk rested on his lips, the one that had haunted their thoughts since the lecture. The simulation began. A group of alien cadets entered the arena first. Within seconds, holographic predators leapt from the shadows. The cadets screamed, stumbling to hold their weapons steady. They fired wildly, their shots barely slowing the beasts. Within minutes, the simulation ended with all cadets marked eliminated. The crowd of students buzzed with nervous chatter. "How can anyone survive this? This is insane. Those things could tear a tank apart." When the human's name was called, the atmosphere shifted. Whispers spread quickly. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. He stepped into the arena with no hesitation, no fear, just steady steps and calm eyes. The instructors activated the simulation, and the arena transformed. The ground cracked open, trees rose like spears, and shadows moved all around him. Then the predators came. A massive beast charged first, claws raking the ground, its roar shaking the arena. Most cadets would have frozen. The human moved instantly. He ducked under its swing, rolled across the dirt, and drove his training blade into the creature's neck. The hologram flickered and collapsed. Gasps filled the stands. Another beast lunged from behind. The human didn't even turn fully. He sidestepped, grabbed a fallen branch from the simulation, and jammed it into the creature's open jaws. The predator vanished in static. The cadets watching couldn't believe it. His movements weren't just trained, they were instinctive. Every dodge, every strike came from someone who had faced danger not in theory but in reality. The simulation increased its difficulty. Swarms of smaller predators burst from the ground, surrounding him in a circle. The human stood tall, scanning them calmly. Then, instead of retreating, he charged forward. His blade cut through two, his fists through another. He grabbed one by the throat and slammed it into the ground, moving faster than the holograms could track. In less than 5 minutes, the arena was empty. Every predator flickered out of existence. The human stood alone, breathing hard but steady, his smirk returning as he wiped the sweat from his brow. The silence in the stands was heavier than any roar. Finally, one cadet whispered, He fights like he's done this before." Another added, trembling, "Because he has, on his planet." The instructor's voice cut through the air, strained but controlled. "Cadet, where did you learn those techniques?" The human looked up at the stands, meeting the eyes of hundreds of stunned cadets. He didn't speak immediately. He let the silence stretch, let their fear deepen, let the weight of the moment press down on them. Then, slowly, his smirk widened. "That," he said, his voice calm but sharp, "that was nothing compared to home." Gasps echoed through the arena. Some cadets flinched back as if struck. His words confirmed what they had feared but never dared say out loud. Earth was not just a world. It was the Deathworld. Whispers spread like fire. "It's true. He admitted it. His home is worse than this?" The instructors exchanged uneasy glances. They had known more than the cadets, but hearing the human say it aloud was something else entirely. The human stood in the middle of the arena, shoulders relaxed, eyes sharp. For him, this wasn't just a fight. It was a message. And the message was clear. Survival wasn't training for humans. It was life itself. As he walked out of the simulation, cadets stared in silence, their fear now mixed with awe. That smirk lingered on his face, unchanged, but its meaning was no longer hidden. It was pride. It was defiance. And it was a warning, because now everyone in the academy understood. The human wasn't just another cadet. He was something else, something forged on a world that the galaxy itself had labeled untouchable. And from this day forward, nothing in the academy would ever be the same. The combat arena had gone silent long after the simulation ended, but the silence followed the cadets back into every corner of the academy. Classrooms, corridors, and even the mess hall buzzed with whispers, all circling back to one truth that no one could deny anymore. Earth, the human's home, a death world. The cadets had seen it with their own eyes, the way he fought, the way he moved as if danger was part of his blood. The holographic beasts that had terrified them had been nothing more than practice for him. And then his words, that was nothing compared to home. They echoed in every mind, impossible to forget. At breakfast the next morning, the mess hall was unusually quiet. Cadets sat in small groups, speaking in half-whispers. Forks clinked against plates, but no one laughed, no one joked. Their eyes kept flicking toward the human at the far end of the hall, eating calmly as though nothing had changed. "He admitted it," one cadet muttered, staring at his untouched food. "He smirked when he said it," another whispered back, like he was proud. The winged cadet hugged her tray close to her chest, feathers trembling. "If his world is really worse than the Deathworlds in our records, how did his kind even survive?" Across the room, the instructors spoke in low voices, their faces tense. They had always known more than the cadets, but even they were shaken. For years, Earth had been whispered about in reports, locked behind layers of classification. Now one human cadet had pulled the truth into the open with nothing but a smirk and a few words. Later that day, in xenobiology class, the unease boiled over. The lecture was supposed to be about predator evolution, but no one was listening. Finally, one cadet raised a trembling hand. "Sir," he asked the instructor, "is it true? Is Earth really a death world?" The room froze. All eyes turned to the instructor, whose jaw tightened. For a long moment he didn't answer. Then, with a heavy sigh, he nodded. Yes, he said slowly. Earth is classified as a Tier 10 Deathworld, the highest ranking we know. Gasps filled the room. Some cadets recoiled, others gripped their desks. The winged cadet whispered, Tier 10? That's beyond impossible. The instructor continued, his voice grave. Your histories speak of worlds where storms destroy cities. Earth has those. Your archives record predators that hunt in packs. Earth has those too, and worse. Diseases, toxins, climates that shift from fire to ice in a single season. By all logic, no species should have risen there. His eyes moved slowly across the room until they landed on the human, sitting quietly, taking notes as if the lecture was about something ordinary. The instructor's voice softened. And yet, they did. The weight of those words pressed down on the cadets like gravity. They couldn't stop staring at the human. For the first time, they didn't just see another cadet. They saw something else, something born from the kind of place that should have destroyed him long ago. After class, the corridors buzzed louder than ever. Cadets gathered in tight groups, their voices trembling with a mix of fear and awe. They shouldn't exist. No wonder he fights like that. If they can survive there, what else are they capable of? One cadet whispered what many were already thinking. What if humans aren't just survivors? What if they're predators? The idea spread quickly, dark and unstoppable. Every glance toward the human carried new weight, as if they were seeing him for the first time. Some cadets avoided walking near him, their steps hurried. Others stared openly, curiosity battling fear. The human noticed, of course. He saw the way conversations stopped when he entered a room, the way eyes followed him. But instead of being bothered, he only seemed more amused. The smirk appeared often now, a quiet reminder that he knew exactly what they were thinking. That evening, in the training yard, a group of cadets finally confronted him. Their voices shook, but the question came out anyway. Why do you act so calm? Don't you realize how dangerous your world sounds to us? The human looked at them, his eyes steady, his smirk faint. Of course I realize, he said. But that's the difference. For you, danger is something rare, something to avoid. For us, it's life. We don't run from it. We grow through it. The cadets had no reply. His words cut too deep, too real. As he walked away, the whispers rose again, louder this time. Fear still lingered, but something else had begun to grow alongside it, respect. Because even if they didn't understand him, even if Earth terrified them, one truth was clear. The human wasn't weak. He wasn't fragile. He was something they could never be. And that realization shook the academy to its core. The days after the revelation felt heavier than any drill. Whispers no longer stopped when the human entered a room, they grew sharper. Fear had turned into something else, doubt. Some cadets believed, some still refused. The academy itself seemed divided, and the tension only grew thicker. In the mess hall, cadets sat in small clusters, their voices heated. He only won because the simulation was too easy. One cadet snapped, his claws tapping against the table. Another shook her head quickly. You saw it. The predators were at maximum level. He didn't even flinch. That doesn't prove his world is worse, a third argued. Anyone can bluff with the right training. The human sat alone at his usual table, calmly finishing his meal. He didn't interrupt, didn't defend himself. His silence only made the whispers louder. By evening, the discontent had grown into something more dangerous. A group of cadets gathered outside the training yard, their eyes locked on the human as he approached. Their leader, a tall reptilian cadet with scaled armor across his chest, stepped forward. You keep smirking, the reptilian growled. You expect us to believe your stories? That your world is worse than the Deathworlds in our archives? The other cadets murmured in agreement, their faces tight with anger and fear. The human stopped, folding his arms. His eyes were calm, steady. I never asked you to believe, he said quietly. The reptilian hissed. Then prove it. If your world is truly what you claim, then show us. Take a challenge. Survive what no cadet has ever survived. Gasps spread through the crowd. Challenges at the academy were rare, dangerous, and often ended in failure. To demand one was almost unthinkable. To accept one could mean humiliation or worse. But the human didn't hesitate. His smirk deepened, as though this was what he had been waiting for all along. "Fine," he said. "Set the challenge." The crowd erupted in noise. Some shouted in disbelief. Others whispered in awe. The instructors arrived quickly, drawn by the commotion. Their faces hardened as they learned what had happened. "You know the risk of a challenge," one instructor said sternly. "If you fail, you will not only lose respect, you may be removed from the academy." The human shrugged, his voice steady. "Then I won't fail." The instructors exchanged uneasy glances. Normally, they would shut down such foolishness, but part of them wanted to see it too. Could a human truly survive what had broken so many others? The next day, the academy gathered in the main arena. The stands were full, every cadet present, their whispers echoing across the walls. The instructors stood at the edge, their expressions grim. The reptilian challenger smirked proudly, convinced the human would finally be exposed. The challenge was announced. The human would face a gauntlet designed to push cadets beyond their limits. Poisoned environments, crushing gravity fields, holographic beasts larger than buildings, and traps designed to test endurance and instincts. No cadet had ever cleared it fully. When the human stepped into the arena, the crowd grew silent. He didn't look nervous. He rolled his shoulders once, then looked up at the stands. His eyes locked with the reptilian cadet who had demanded this test. The smirk appeared again. The gauntlet began. The first section was a poison swamp. Cadets usually lasted only minutes before stumbling out, coughing from the simulated toxins. The human moved carefully, but with surprising ease. He wrapped his sleeve around his mouth, waded through the muck, and kept moving forward without a pause. The second section was a gravity field, heavy enough to crush most into the ground. Cadets watching winced as the weight pressed down on him. But instead of crawling, the human stood tall, each step slow but deliberate, his muscles straining yet refusing to give in. He reached the end with steady breath. Then came the predators. Massive creatures with claws like blades and jaws wide enough to swallow a cadet whole. Gasps filled the arena as three appeared at once, circling him. The human didn't run. He crouched low, eyes sharp, then moved with speed the simulation almost couldn't match. He fought with precision, each strike decisive, each dodge instinctive. One by one, the predators collapsed into static. The crowd roared in disbelief. The reptilian cadet's smirk had vanished. His claws tapped nervously against the railing. The human kept going. Traps snapped, flames erupted, storms raged. Where other cadets had always faltered, he pushed forward. His body bore the strain, but his eyes never lost their focus. And when he finally reached the end of the gauntlet, standing tall as the final obstacle flickered out, the arena fell into stunned silence. Then, slowly, the whispers rose. He did it. No one has ever cleared the gauntlet. He wasn't lying. His world. It must be worse than all this. The human looked up at the crowd, breathing hard but still steady. That smirk returned, sharper now, aimed directly at those who had doubted him. "You wanted proof," he said, his voice carrying across the arena. "There it is." The cadets stared at him with wide eyes, their fear now mixed with something deeper, respect. Even the instructors, who rarely showed emotion, exchanged glances of awe. The reptilian cadet looked away, his pride shattered. And as the human walked out of the arena, his smirk lingering, one truth settled over the academy like a shadow. He hadn't just accepted the challenge. He had owned it. The arena was still buzzing long after the gauntlet ended. Cadets poured out of their seats, their voices a storm of disbelief, awe, and fear. No one had ever cleared the gauntlet, not even the instructors in their prime. Yet the human had walked through every trap, every predator, every hazard, and finished it standing tall. The reptilian cadet who had challenged him stayed silent, his pride shattered. He had expected the human to fail, to prove that Earth was just a bluff. But now his claws trembled as he replayed the sight of the human tearing through the impossible course. In the corridors, groups of cadets argued. It's not natural. No species should be able to endure that much. Did you not see? He didn't just endure, he adapted. He made it look like practice. Then it must be true. Earth is worse than anything we know. Whispers traveled through every hall, every dormitory, every classroom. Earth was no longer a mystery. It was a legend, a nightmare wrapped in truth. And the human, who had once been just another cadet, was now something else entirely. Later that evening, the academy gathered in the grand hall. The instructors called it an assembly, but everyone knew why they were there. The gauntlet had changed everything. The head instructor stepped forward, his voice steady but heavy. Today, you witnessed something none of you will forget. You saw proof that one of your fellow cadets comes from a world unlike any you have studied. Earth is not a myth. It is real. And it is far more dangerous than any Deathworld you have been taught to fear. The cadets shifted uneasily. Some glanced at the human, sitting near the front, calm and silent. His smirk had returned, though faint, as though he had been expecting this moment all along. The head instructor's voice grew lower. You may fear him, you may question him, but you must understand what you fear is not the cadet. It is the truth of where he comes from. All eyes turned toward the human. The silence stretched, thicker than before. Finally, one cadet dared to ask the question that still lingered in every heart. If Earth is so dangerous, how do you survive it? The human stood slowly, his presence commanding the hall without effort. He didn't shout. He didn't posture. He simply spoke, his voice carrying with calm strength. We survive the same way you breathe, he said, because we were born there. Danger is not an enemy to us. It is our teacher. The words sank into every mind. The cadets stared, their fear deepening but mingling with something new. Respect. Another cadet, her feathers trembling, whispered, "What do you call such a place?" The smirk returned, sharper now, cutting through the silence like a blade. His eyes swept across the hall, meeting every gaze, and then he answered, "You call it a Deathworld." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "We call it Earth." The hall erupted in whispers, gasps, and stunned silence. The simplicity of his answer struck harder than any roar. It wasn't just pride. It was truth, carved into every word. For the aliens, Earth was now a legend of terror. For humans, it was simply home. That night, the academy was never the same. Cadets who once mocked him now stepped aside when he passed. Those who had doubted him watched with wide eyes, their curiosity battling with unease. Even the instructors, who had spent years teaching fear of Deathworlds, carried a new respect whenever they looked at the human cadet. But for him, nothing had changed. He still walked with calm steps, still smirked at their whispers, still carried himself like danger was just another part of life. Because for him, it was. On the training grounds, cadets whispered in awe. He cleared the gauntlet. He faced predators we couldn't stand against. He comes from Earth. And somewhere deep inside, each of them realized a chilling truth. If one human cadet could do this, what would happen if the rest of his kind arrived? The galaxy had feared Deathworlds for centuries. Now they knew that the most dangerous of them all wasn't empty. It was full of humans. The smirk stayed on his lips as he looked at the stars that night. He knew what the others were thinking, and he didn't mind. Fear, awe, respect, it didn't matter. What mattered was the truth. Because he was Earthborn, and that meant he was never afraid.